Good morning to all, and also a warm welcome to the summer school for my part. Who am I? I'm Ronald Crouzé, a PhD researcher at the Free University of Brussels at the Department of Education, and my research revolves around citizenship and civic education in an urban context. And it is within this framework I would like to discuss with you a certain topic, but mostly ask you a question. The question is, what political potential does a city have? Why this question? Well, there's two developments in the recent history of urban politics which motivates it. The first is the enormous growth of citizenship initiatives, bottom-up initiatives or grassroots initiatives that citizens take. Think of community gardens, zero waste neighborhoods, collectives for public space, etc. These are all initiatives which comes in different sizes and shapes, but which are all motivated by the will of citizens to change their direct environments and by consequence also change society, because usually this is inscribed in a larger idea. Let's take for instance the fact of against climate change, etc. So this bottom-up dynamics arise from the will of its inhabitant to change and offer the possibility to act politically to the citizens. So politic not in the formal sense as voting or procedures, but rather as being shaping society. The second element which is important and which is development on urban politics is the growth of widespread street protests. The last decades, street protests have become bigger and have become more frequent and have become a tool for citizens to shape the political agenda. Let's think of Black Lives Matter, the Yellow Vest movements, Claim the Climate, etc. So in the first element, the first development, the citizen initiatives, the citizen is the motivator or the subject of these acts. And in the second, it's more the context of these protests. But both offer ways for citizens to express themselves in other than the formal political ways, let's say, and something which is quite interesting, especially in times where there is a rising distrust towards politics, where there is lower voter turnouts in other countries, as in Belgium it is mandatory. So the city holds a strong political potential for citizens to shape society. But the question is, do they really have so much power? Or rather, is it enough? Can citizens protest citizenship initiatives really have an impact? Can they really shape society? Or are they only fiddling at the margins? As we can see, most of the developments in cities are led by more global change. Of course, it's a difficult dynamic, but by real estate dynamics that are above the scale of this urban initiative. The same for climate change. It is such a huge process. How can small-scale initiatives change this? And this is important to raise these questions, to ask what is the actual potential, political potential of these initiatives. I will take two examples to clarify my points. The first is the Picnic the Streets movement, which took place a couple of years ago and which made way for the center to be car-free, let's say. There were activists or citizens who wanted more space for themselves as citizens to live, let's say, and which was successful. Now the center is much more pleasant without cars, but the making of car-free the center has also gone paired with the development of an economic and touristic center, which is also important, but which again is quite homogeneous and limits the possibility of citizens, and which is not directed to its immediate inhabitants, but rather the consuming tourist or outsider. A second example is the one of squatting or temporary use, which has been, especially temporary use, which has been quite successful thanks to organizations such as Comuna or Toestands, which are NGOs or collectives with a political message against social and spatial inequality, and which wants to make vacant buildings accessible to its residents through social cultural initiatives or through housing projects. This has become a successful way to deal with vacant buildings, but it has become so successful that it has also become part of a strategic and commercial development of the city, where large real estate um, companies make way for a temporary use, but from an economic logic, let's say, so that gentrification already can make its way. So from these two examples, we can see that the radical potential or the activist claims made by its citizens are put in a certain economic logic and part of larger city dynamics. So the question arises, can citizens really influence the directions in which cities go? Do they have an influence? Are citizens' initiatives doomed to stay small? Or can citizens and their initiatives actually be actors of change?